I recently read a very traditional Catholic magazine that had an article on why Catholics cannot believe in the theory of evolution because it suggests that suffering and death preceded original sin and that there were human-like species that did not have souls. This would be contrary to church teaching. Can Catholics, he asks, reconcile believing both in the biblical story of creation and the theory of evolution? And this is unsigned, okay? So what about that?
Okay, yes. Oh, yeah. The answer is yes. First, with respect to the scientific grounds of evolution and Catholics' ability to believe in evolution, there are two major works which you should be aware of. The first one is an encyclical called Humani Generis by Pope Pius XII. Now, in that encyclical, Pope Pius XII indicates, right, he's uncertain whether evolution is right or whether it's wrong. He doesn't know. He doesn't pretend to know, but he does allow Catholics expressly in that encyclical to believe in evolution so far as scientific evidence supports it. And, you know, with the condition, and this is an important condition, that we do not become what might be called biological and physical reductionists. So what he means by that is you can't not believe as a Catholic that every human being has a uniquely created transphysical soul destined for eternity, created by God. You can't deny the existence of a soul in order to believe in evolution. Now, of course, that is not really, you know, it's very, very difficult to deny the soul today, right? As I've talked about in previous episodes, near-death experiences, which we'll talk about in the future, right? There is a lot of evidence that you have a transphysical soul. And there's a lot of other evidence for your transphysical soul, right, that comes from what's called philosophy of mind and a variety of other areas. But for the time being, right now, yes, you can, according to Pope Pius XII, so long as you don't disbelieve in a transphysical soul, you can believe in evolution so long as science supports that. Later, I believe this is 1989, St. John Paul II did a presentation to the Pontifical Commission on Science, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Now, I may surprise you to know that there is a Pontifical Academy of Natural Sciences and that there are lots of Nobel Prize winners that belong to that Pontifical Academy. Anyway, Pope St. John Paul II did actually give a presentation saying that it looked today as if the evidence for evolution was becoming, you know, there was such a preponderance of it that it was no longer just a hypothesis, but that it was a tenable theory that Catholics can believe in. So he elevated it literally from a hypothesis, which Pope Pius XII said an acceptable hypothesis, now to a tenable theory, and that you can get that letter and presentation of St. John Paul II. You can get that right on Google. Just put evolution, John Paul II, Pontifical Academy, you'll get the whole thing. It's striking, really, how far St. John Paul went. Now, getting back to your argument, you know, it sounds like there's a direct conflict, right, between the idea that, you know, there was no suffering, you know, in you know, evolutionary theory. Where theologians are going today, and I think where St. John Paul II wanted to go today, was, you know, to the idea that what we're talking about is a natural, you know, tension, and not only tension, but even a natural, you know, difficult conflict between the human person and nature itself that arises out of original sin. That's the way that theologians would explain the problem, you know, of you know, it's a kind of an additional kind of suffering. It's an enhanced kind of suffering that belongs to a rational being. But the idea, you know, that pre-human beings can't suffer. I don't think any theologian, even St. John Paul II, would have ever suggested that pre-human beings could not suffer, prior to the fall. It's just that human beings now suffer in a super abundant way because of the fall, because of the natural conflict that comes out between humans and the rational nature of the errant human will, right? Once that happens, right, there's going to be a conflict which exacerbates, the suffering that occurred. And that's how, St. John Paul can make that statement with a straight face to the Pontifical Biblical Commission. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of a very good argument before. Believe me, there had been substantial reflection on it before today. But it's a good question, and it needs and deserves to be answered. And I think that's how people answer it.